Well, thousands of people are petitioning to block a plan to use the Sydney Opera House to promote the Everest Cup. Last I checked, we'd hit 200,000 on that petition today. The jockey's colours, horses, barrier numbers and trophy will be projected onto the iconic building. The Prime Minister's rejecting suggestions the advertisement promotes gambling, though.
It's not like they're painting it on there. I mean, it's the lights flashing up there for a brief moment in time, and that goes all around the world, and they do it for other things, and, you know, the Wallabies indeed, and others. So, look, I just don't understand why we tie ourselves up in knots about these things.
Of course, the Opera House was built, funded by a lottery, which some people forget, which is a form of gambling.
That's ironic, and that's true.
Yes,
and you know, it's maintained by the patronage of, you know, Australians and taxpayers.
And on the back of that, the opposition leader Bill Shorten says that the Prime Minister hasn't given the World Heritage listed site the respect it deserves.
Unlike Prime Minister Morrison, I don't look at the Opera House and see a billboard. I see a remarkable Australian achievement.
Well, that is our top issue for our Taking Stock panel tonight. We're joined by Tim Harcourt, the airport economist, knows a thing or two about dealings with government too. On this particular issue might be quite interesting. He's been an international economic advisor for 3 federal cabinet ministers, 2 state premiers as well. And Shivani Gopal is with us. She's from The Remarkable Woman, the founder, and of course already known to our Your Money audience. So Shivani and Tim, welcome to the show tonight.
Hello.
Tim, to you first. I think today I was still trying to get to the heart of what is actually at the centre of this whole outrage. It took us a few days to kind of really get there, I think. What do you reckon it's all about?
Look, I've got to say, my grandfather and his brother were known as the Racing Harcourts, and they had their own racing show on Sydney radio because they were actually professional punters. So I have a bit of sympathy for the racing industry. Right. Having said that, I don't think that's what it's about. I think a lot of it was to do with a certain interview by a certain radio presenter being rather unpleasant to the CEO of the Opera House, and I think that's what's caused the issue, much more than the fact that you're going to see a few things flash on the Opera House, and we have Vivid, we have the Wallabies, we have the Mardi Gras.
Samsung promotion a few years ago.
We do lots of things with the Opera House, and the beautiful thing about it, it is the people's house, and all the people can use it.
I suppose one of the things that seems to be causing some of the outrage is that this is kind of a gambling event.
Yeah. I think that's what it is.
Shivani, do you think that that is kind of the issue here, that we've got a problem in Australia with gambling and we're going to flash it up on the Sydney Opera House?
Yeah, look, I think we actually need to take a step back from the whole question around gambling and just sort of look at, you know, there are 2 key issues here that's causing the cringe, right? And one is, okay, so it's heritage listed, and are we really respecting the dignity of this Australian icon? And the second part is, well, are we using it as this, you know, gigantic national billboard? And I think one of the problems is that Scott Morrison actually said, well, why don't we use the best billboard that we have? And I think that was a bit of a language issue. If he just said, why not use the best icon in Australia that we have to promote an event that is bigger than the Melbourne Cup, and we want to create some kind of affinity from a tourist perspective, I think that would have been taken a lot better. Yes, there was that interview as well from that certain radio host as well that I think we're not naming.
Alan Jones.
Alan Jones, and it was Louise Heron, wasn't it?
Yes,
the
it was.
CEO.
But to answer your question around the gambling, I don't think that's a fair analogy, actually, because if you think about the fact that the Wallabies were also, you know, projected up there, we've got to be quite naive, I think, as a nation to think that that there's not sports bet out there and that people aren't betting on the rugby union and so forth. So, yes, it's a consistent analogy. If you can do it for that, then you should be able to do it for the other. Look, I don't like it. I think it's a bit tacky, but from a tourism perspective,
see, would you have a problem if it was some kind of event empowering women? Would you want it to be on the sales of the
I'd want it to be on, absolutely. And I think it's
the Remarkable Woman.
The Remarkable Woman.
Yeah, Remarkable Woman on the Opera House. Let's do it.
You know, the airport economist every other day.
Double standards there, right? Like, we're kind of icky about it, but
we are. And then you think about,
why just don't be so precious?
And how do we finance the Opera House? With a lottery.
Yes, yeah, that was.
I mean, gambling is in our DNA, isn't it? From the Rum Rebellion, from the beginning. But I guess in some ways, I think the point that it's iconic more than a billboard, that was just perhaps a sloppy use of the
language. The language was probably an issue for people.
Sure, and meanwhile, cheeky Melbourne flashed up Winx, the racehorse, on the Flinders, on the Flinders Street station, which is another heritage list, very well-known Australian thing. All down the side was the racehorse, just quietly. Nobody really seemed to bother too much. Is this a Sydney thing? I mean, I'm from Melbourne. I want to know, what's with the outfit?
Do people in Tokyo
we own it here.
We're very protective.
Do people in Tokyo and Shanghai go, wow, did you see what was on Flinders Street Station?
Oh, that's a good point. Okay, spoken like a Sydney sider though. Yeah, okay.
You travel all over the world. You're the airport economist, and I think have you been to every country in the world? Probably almost.
60 in the last 6 years.
60
if you
in the
count
last 6
Kazakhstan.
years. There you go. Okay,
I think you do, yeah.
Have you seen this type of thing? I mean, because the Prime Minister's point was, you know, this is a tourism opportunity. Let's not be silly. This is a major opportunity to market
People always
ourselves to the
know.
world.
People, when they watch the New Year's Eve fireworks, they always know Sydney, and they know the Opera House, and they know the Harbour Bridge, and it's the same with, you know, with the Olympics and all our major sporting events. It's true that the Everest is new, and it's not iconic like the Melbourne Cup yet. I think they hope it will be in another 100 years, but you know, they're obviously trying to use the Opera House because the Opera House is iconic and it's got that brilliant reputation.
Yeah, and the issue got blown up again and again and again because of Alan Jones and the conversation. We talked around it a little bit. Is this an out-and-out case of bullying in front of absolutely everyone, or is it kind of a little more nuanced than that? What do you think, Siobhan?
Yeah, look, when I read about that, I certainly felt that his approach and his interview style was definitely bullying. I mean, if you think about the way that one would speak to another person in a professional, respectable, you know, professional environment, you certainly wouldn't do so in that way, and you certainly wouldn't call for someone to lose their job over decisions. And certainly, you know, the CEO of the Opera House has every right to make decisions that are based on the integrity and the respect of you know, the Opera House. So certainly I did think that caused a whole bunch of controversy. But I think that, if anything, that interview served its purpose for Alan Jones. So it was all about, let's promote the Everest. It's done its job, and his interview as well certainly did its job, and it put it up in the lights. We're all talking about it.
I wonder if that's right, I think.
We've got to move on to another topic, but I want to give a final word to Kedden Joshi, who's on Twitter, who says, his view was that, please no one tell Clive Palmer the Opera House is now a billboard.
Yeah, well, that's a good point.
We couldn't handle that. Let's go. We want to talk about the influence of Amazon, which is a discussion that is ongoing at barbecues and backyards all the time, I think. Chris, in particular, spotted a great article in The Australian this morning about Jeffrey Cole, who's a tech guru from the United States.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Talking about the next kind of industries that will be Amazoned, as we decided we'd call it.
Yeah, that's right. This was the front page of the Business Review, the Australian Business Review. Jeffrey Cole, world-leading digital strategy expert, he said that eventually every new car in North America could be sold through Amazon. I mean, the question, first of all, is do you think that that's possible? Do you think that we could shop on Amazon for a new car? And if that is true, where does it end? I mean, is there anything that's not touchable by this trillion-dollar behemoth?
I'd imagine that in China they'd think up their own Amazon, wouldn't they, for car sales, wouldn't they? I mean, you could do it. It could be a first mover, but naturally people will localise and imitate for their own purposes. Because even though we do think we live in this great global world where you can buy everything at a click of a button, there is local knowledge still, and there is service, and that's why even with outsourcing, you know, people have often moved back to Australia when they were outsourcing those types of things. So I think Amazon could be first mover, but I think other people will pick it up.
I think the car sales industry is certainly ripe for disruption, and I think we won't see it in the standard Amazon kind of way. There'll be another derivative of it, so they'll package it up really nicely. It'll be really interesting to see what their play-to-win strategy is going to be on this. But when you look at it, you think, goodness, women are going to love this. So when you read what, you know, Jeff Cole has talked about around the packaging of this service, it's going to be a whole virtual, you know, specs of the car and a virtual drive, and then I'm going to press a button, the car's going to arrive and I'm going to test drive it, right? No more, and I've experienced this time and time again, even when I have research to the nines, no more being talked down to, being patronised by the car salesperson, telling me to bring my father or to bring my husband or to bring my brother back.
Do they still do that?
They still do that.
As
really?
3 months ago, yes, they do.
Yes.
And I think women are going to love it. And the car industry are really going to have to pull their socks up. And the other thing is, other traditional industries have also been disrupted. So when we think about mattresses, right, we think we need to see it, touch it, feel it, pinch it, squish it, jump on it, all that sort of stuff, right? Then you look at Koala Mattress. I mean, they have 14 million in first-year turnover.
Big in South Korea? you name it.
Are they big in South Korea?
Koala, yeah. Like car sales are big in Latin America.
I don't want to sound like a promotion, but I recently just did the koala.
Yeah.
Because they've gone into sofas.
Yeah, they have.
4 hours. I went sofa shopping, took me like weeks, didn't know what to do, couldn't decide on the fabric, and then I saw it, 4-hour delivery,
and
one colour,
what brilliant
comes
branding.
to my door.
Koalas are cuddly, so you want soft and cuddly for mattresses. It's brilliant branding, isn't it?
Brilliant, right?
Yeah.
And you think, could that be then translated into cars? If I could press a button and say in 4 hours I'm going to get that beautiful car to my door,
why not?
Of course you would do it.
Totally. Shivani, that's such a good point about the difficult industries that can be a real pain. But also in the Jeffrey Cole article, as you might have seen, there are other industries that were singled out, like the movie business, which, I mean, I associate with having a good time seeing a movie. Healthcare, maybe not so much. Sports rights, financial services, all these sorts of things. Jeff Bezos, $150 billion. Amazon's worth $1 trillion. I mean, the question comes back to Amazon and whether or not that is the business that we are going to just associate with absolutely every business transaction we have.
Well, mate, I mean, I shouldn't say this, but, you know, I teach at the University of New South Wales. All right, we have a good international reputation, but will there be a time when there'll be disruption in education? Because there's this huge demand in Asia, huge middle class for skills. I mean, in India, they've got so many people who want tertiary education. There's only so many Indian institutes. So will an Amazon become a university and offer degrees?
How could that scare you? But they already are. So Amazon's already got, you know, a huge startup accelerator for edtechs.
There you go.
And they're very much playing in that space because edtech now has, you know, the valuation could be up to 13 times EBITDA. So they're very strong in terms of, you know, future valuations, and probably one of the top 5 startups actually in Australia and internationally. So it's a strong space to play in. Sorry, we're pivoting from Amazon and car sales.
Because there was McDonald's University. There was Disney University.
Yes.
You can do a Mickey Mouse degree at Disney University.
Actually, a Mickey Mouse
education is the next booming startup, and especially in technology. And will there be an Amazon version of everything? Look, you've got to think so, because they've got a really strong hand in technology. They've got the money, they've got the power, they've got the contacts, and they've done it really well. They get customer service, right? And they get efficiency, the whole lean business operation. So I think a whole bunch of industries better watch out.
Tim, can we just give one question to you finally on a completely separate topic, but people that have watched the share market today would have seen that have been hit by some worries out of China. China's come back online after some holidays, and the trade worries have actually taken a big hit in the market. I think it was one of the indexes down 3.6% that I saw.
Well, we thought, didn't
What's the issue here?
Well, we thought originally that Trump would just be trade policy by Twitter. And what he'd do is he'd just threaten a few things, and he'd get a couple of American companies to pull a couple of plants out of Mexico and say, right, we've saved some jobs in Michigan and Wisconsin, and that's that. But he's actually serious, you know, because we're now hitting where we're seeing real tariffs being hiked that'll probably hurt America most. You know, it's like putting rocks in your own harbour. The question is whether China's going to retaliate, or whether you just sit back and watch America really hurt itself. And for Australia, it could make us the reliable trading partner, you know, in the Asia Pacific with a chaotic United States. So it could be quite good for us. Could be good for us.
Well, we'll certainly keep an eye on the Aussie dollar, which has been sinking like a stone of late. Tim Harcourt, the airport economist, thank you so much. Shivani Gopal from The Remarkable Woman, thank you for joining us for Taking Stock tonight.